I've got a terrible secret that's so terrible I can't even remember it. It goes way back to when I was at school. From when I was about 8 years old, for about 5 years, I went to school with a kid called Mark. He was a great guy. He was one of my best friends. He was a terrific kid. When the rest of us were being boisterous and exuberant and getting into trouble, he was the voice of reason. He was the calm, collected one. He was very sensible. In hindsight, I would describe him as honest and trustworthy and reliable. He was great. When we were about 11 or 12 years old, after we'd known each other for, a number of years, he was telling me about how he had capped teeth. His 2 front teeth had crowns. I didn't know what that was. So he went into great detail describing to me the process of having his front teeth replaced with crowns. I found it fascinating. I thought it was really great. But what he didn't tell me in the story was why he needed to have it done. So when he finished, I said, "How did you lose your teeth?" And he looked absolutely disgusted and annoyed and said, "You knocked them out." I didn't know what he was talking about. I said, "What do you mean?" By now he's looking angry and disgusted, and told me that 2 or 3 years earlier he'd been running through the classroom and I had deliberately stuck my foot out and tripped him over, and he'd fallen flat on his face and knocked his teeth out. I'm listening to this story absolutely horrified. I couldn't remember any of that. This was news to me. I knew nothing about it. I couldn't remember any of it. But the fact that it was Mark that was telling me the story meant that it must be true. And I'm standing there thinking, I can't remember any of this. And as he was telling me the story, it wasn't coming back to me. I was still not remembering it. And he was getting pretty agitated because I seemed to be not acknowledging my responsibility. But I apologised to him profusely and changed the subject, and we moved on to something else. With the hindsight of a fully grown, mature adult, it's a terrible thing. I'm just imagining this little kid lying in a pool of blood flat on his face, unconscious on the floor, with all the adults in the place running around trying to get help, and all the kids in the place being hysterical, and there was probably an ambulance called, and they would have gone across the road to get his mother because he just lived across the road, and my parents would have been involved, and it would have just been an awful, awful thing. But I still can't remember any of it. So I'm thinking, maybe it was one of those things that was just so traumatic that I blocked it out completely out of my mind. Any reference to it is completely gone. And having thought that, I then have to think, are there other things I've done that I've blocked out as well? I've always thought of myself as a pretty easygoing, friendly, happy, nice person. But is there some dark side to me that I can't remember? Was there a time in my life when I used to do horrible things? When I would deliberately trip a kid over and knock his front teeth out? I actually met somebody once who said that he remembered me from when I was about 9 years old. I didn't remember him from then, but he said he remembered me, and he said that I used to throw stones at him when he was on his way home from school. I can't imagine me ever doing that. That's not the kind of thing I would ever do. I accept unequivocally that I tripped Mark over and that he knocked his teeth out. I'm hoping that it was actually an accident and people just thought I did it deliberately. But it's been weighing heavily on my conscience for a long time now. I just hope that that's the worst thing I've ever done. I hope that there aren't other things in my past that I've blocked out that are really nasty, horrible things. It's really quite confronting. It's really quite scary to think that there may have been a side to me that I really don't want to remember. Maybe it's a good thing that I can't remember. when Mark and I were 13, we went off to different high schools and lost touch with each other, which is a real shame because we'd been good mates and we'd had a lot of fun together. One of the things I remember the most about Mark was that he was generally always happy and always smiling, and I'm pleased to say that his smile was never diminished by having cat teeth.